Hello, everybody, and welcome to Barino's Bodybuilding and Fitness. I'm your host, Joe Barino, and today I would like to talk about our Bodybuilders Too Conditioned. I came across this article by Lee Haney, and for those of you who don't know, Lee Haney is an 8-time Mr. Olympia, one of the first quote-unquote mass monsters, but he was around in the mid to late 80s. No, he's around for all the 80s pretty much, and the early 90s. The first one to ever break Arnold Schwarzenegger's Olympia streak of 7. One of the greatest bodybuilders to ever grace the planet. He was big, but he was symmetrical. He was proportioned. He's a gentleman. He's also a fellow believer, which I love. But Lee Haney released this article, and it stumped me. I truly don't know what to think. He released an article saying back in my day, we would compete, still be conditioned, and be alive. He mentions in the article that Arnold Schwarzenegger is 75, Frank Zane is close to 80, Dave Draper, who just recently died, was close to 80, Bill Pearl was 90. These old school bodybuilders are living to a pretty natural old age. And he's saying that the judges shouldn't be rewarding people that are overly conditioned. This stumps me. Because as we all know, conditioning is very important in bodybuilding. Of course, symmetry, size, proportion, but the conditioning is how you see the muscles. Now, if my memory serves me correct, the first bodybuilder to ever died from being overly conditioned, and I'm only going to use that word because he died from this, was Andreas Munzer. Andreas Munzer died in the late 90s. He was a bodybuilder known for his conditioning. He was in contest shape all year round. At any point of the year, he would have a shredded six-pack, feathers on his triceps. Never won any major titles, sadly, but he died. Doctors literally told him before the last show he competed in, you will die. And he still did it. And he died. This was in the 90s. Now, in the 90s, bodybuilders weren't dropping like flies. Over the past 5 years, we've lost so many bodybuilders. But here's the conundrum, though. Not all of them were lost due to being overly conditioned or too close to showtime. Like if we look, who died close to showtime? George DeBull. He died, I think, a few days before he was going to compete. So you can include him in that argument. We lost Dallas McCarver when he was a few weeks out. So you can make that argument. But I'm going to argue against Lee Haney on this one and think it's not that it's the condition. Because you look in the 90s, look at Kevin Levrone. I remember there's one interview where his cheekbones are showing because of how conditioned he is. And he's still fine to this day. He's in his 50s, still thriving. He's one of my favorite bodybuilders of all time. You look at Flex Wheeler, who just won the Lifetime Achievement Award, conditioned to the bone in the 90s. Now you can argue they may be overly conditioned in today's era, or they can be too conditioned, because that, I can agree with that, because if you look in the 70s and 80s, they weren't like bone dry. Nick Walker was extremely conditioned for this show, and he looked phenomenal. But you think about the other bodybuilders that passed away as of late. And it wasn't from being overly conditioned. Yes, I'm considering him a bodybuilder, Rich Piana. He died, he was in his 40s. He died, gosh, I can't remember the specific year. Was it 2018, 2019? But he was just a mass monster. He was huge. You saw his arm. You saw the way he presented himself. He had an image to uphold. And whatever he was taking to keep him holding that image, his body gave out. You look at Flexitron, Sean Roden. He wasn't competing, not even close to competing. He was still in his trial and technically banned from competing in the O. He died at 38. Oh, it's so sad. And you look at some of the bodybuilders that have passed away, like Mike Matarazzo. He passed away at an early age. Cedric McMillan. That's a sad one. He was always so full of life, so full of joy whenever he competed. You can just see the genuineness on him, and he carried himself with such grace. And he passed away. I believe he was in his 40s as well. But point being, with all the previous bodybuilders I just mentioned, they weren't overly conditioned. Now, do I think that the way these bodybuilders are getting conditioned is healthy? No. They're taking these extreme diuretics, these extreme supplements to get them in this extreme form, and it's not healthy. Lee Haney mentions in the article how he did natural stuff to get himself conditioned. Black coffee, tea, cutting water, herbal remedies to get himself in that conditioning, which I believe bodybuilders should go back to. And I know I literally said before, should they be rewarding overly conditioned? Like, to a point, yes, but sometimes you can be too conditioned where it compromises your musculature. That's why when you look back, why does everybody think the 70s, 80s, and 90s were the greatest era? I think because at those eras, they weren't too conditioned. They were symmetrical, very proportionate, had great mass, but they looked super appealing because they weren't bone dry. But then bodybuilders are taking it to that extreme. And then you look in the late 90s, 2000s, when that was starting to get rewarded, that became the new standard. So they started rewarding that. They rewarded the extremities. And bodybuilding, it's been around since 1965. So it's not new by any means. Not quite old. But it's still finding its judgmental footing. What do we reward? If you look at the past Mr. Olympia 2022, Hadi Choopan won. He wasn't a mass. I mean, of course, he's technically a mass monster, but he looked symmetrical. He looked great. I don't think he was overly conditioned. Nick Walker looked more conditioned to me in this Arnold Classic than he did. Samson wasn't as conditioned as Nick Walker, and he won the Arnold Classic. So, what do you all think? This is such a weird topic because I'm utterly stumped. I don't know what to believe because I love this sport. But it's a good question Lee Haney proposes. He's one of my favorite bodybuilders of all time, and I love and respect his opinion. But I'm not sure about this one. You can't argue with him with the fact that the bodybuilders we have lost, when they were close to showtime, maybe the diuretics were in play. Who knows? But what do you all think? Do you think judges should stop rewarding bodybuilders who are overly conditioned? Or do you think that should add to the point system? Let me know what you all think in the likes and comments. Thank you all for watching this video. Again, this is a new YouTube channel, so forgive me for any stumbles, any errors. I'm just a big fan of bodybuilding, and I'm blessed to know how to record and edit videos, so I figure, why not? Now is a good time to start a Zenny. I know there's so many channels out there, but thank you all so much for watching this video. Let's converse. Comment below what you think. Please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you all so much. God bless, and have a great day. I'll see you on the next one.